Yeah, let me just talk.
Yeah, say whatever
Okay.
you want.
One of the biggest challenges that homeowners face is really understanding what's going on inside their house. And as we've made our houses tighter and tighter and tighter, in other words, energy's gotten expensive, so we put brand new windows in, we put new steel doors, sealed with magnetic, just like our freezers are, insulated the walls, wrapped the houses in plastic and vinyl. Moisture no longer exchanges through the walls, and it all goes up. And it goes up into an attic. And one thing we did not do was change the venting in a home. And as a result, these houses are filling up with moisture. The moisture hasn't got out, just builds up a few percent a year. And then it reaches a critical point and just explodes with mold. I would encourage every homeowner, take a peek. Pop the hatch, put your head up there, take a look, and see if you don't have mold growing. 30 to 40% of the houses we go in have serious mold problems. Almost 90% of them have some mold started. So far since I've been doing this in 2000, and we check every home we go into, we've had to see 3 get bulldozed down. So take a peek, it's getting worse.
Past few weeks, we've had record low temperatures. Snow, ice storms, snow melting, water in basements, ice damming, water in your attics, moisture everywhere, you name it. In fact, my house, I put new floodlights in the above my garage, and I have a 3-foot overhang, and the one floodlight went out, so I called my electrician. He comes out, and guess what? He says to me, Adam, I took it off. It was full of water. How could it be full of water? I got it in a garage. Well, it's a heated garage. So I'm like, oh boy, got to call my roof guy. It's a big mess. So here's what I want to take for you, my friends. I want you to be prepared if something goes wrong in your house. So here's a couple tips that we want people to do to be prepared in an emergency in these winter months. And in studio with me right now is Frank Farmer from American Metal Roof, who's not only an expert in roofing, but also in mold and ventilation. Is that correct, Frank?
That is absolutely correct.
Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you.
I feel like I just saw you.
You know, we're friends, right?
Yeah, hey, listen, when the content is great, that's when the listeners love it. And you know what? Last couple of weeks, we've had blockbuster shows, so thank you for the great content.
You're welcome. Let's go.
So here's the thing. So if you want to protect your house in the winter from any kind of water emergency, frozen pipes, leaky roofs or whatever, the first thing I always tell people is take pictures of your possessions. Because when the insurance company comes over, they don't know what you have. And they're going to say, oh, well, you give us a list of everything you have. Do you know how anxiety-driven is that when you have to put a list together?
Yeah, it is. And they're not prepared usually.
Right. You got to know where your water shutoff is. You got a frozen pipe and you got water rushing, you got to know in the basement. I ask people, you know where your water meter is? They kind of look at me, is that the thing that comes through the wall? They don't know. Frank, have you ever, do you know where yours is in your house?
I know exactly where it's at. I've had to reach for it.
Right, so you know. The other tip I give is have your furnace inspected yearly, test your sump pump, call your insurance company. And the reason why I tell everyone to call the insurance company, call your agent and just ask, do you have the proper coverage? Because sometimes it'd be like, oh, you want sump pump coverage? That's another $100 a year. Well, for $100 one time, it pays for itself 1,000 times over. So you got to be careful with that. And my point is when you take pictures of your possessions, email them to yourself. You know why? Because once you email yourself a bunch of pictures, it's there forever.
Yes.
And all it takes is, everyone's got a smartphone. Walk into each room, click, click, click. 3 pictures a room, up, down, sideways, just your possessions. And then you've got a list. It's the easiest thing anyone can do, and it saves you so much time and money. But, look, it is what it is. Frank, tell everyone about how important ventilation is in an attic for a roof, mold, respiratory issues. And let's get into this subject.
Yeah. Adam, I tell you, I'm trained as a physician. Went to medical school in the early 1980s. And we've seen a lot of issues where mold was a real problem in houses, and that has paid me huge dividends inside this roofing business. We go into homes, and I'm not talking about the houses that you walk in and you smell mold. They've got a basement problem or some rot going on. I'm talking about houses they have no idea what's going on. They may have tightened up this house. They've made it so tight that all the moisture is going up into the attic. One thing they did not do was correct the ventilation. And what starts to happen is the moisture content, we measure the moisture content in every house that we go into in the attic. We use a meter, And we'll get moisture contents that are normal in the 6, 8, sometimes even high as 9. But by the time we get to the summertime and dry out, it's getting a 5 or 6 reading. But we'll see houses 15, 16, 18. Had one I got involved with this last week. It was at 60.
Now, 60%?
60% as measured with a meter.
Okay, so a moisture meter. Yeah,
it's wet.
It's just
It was, and the person did not want to let the rep in the attic. Said, "Oh, we have absolutely no problems." And we got up there, and it's complete slimy mold on the underside of the roof decking throughout the insulation. He picked up the insulation, squeezed it. Water ran out of it. Okay,
Toxic mess.
It is a mess. A third to the half of the houses that we go into have a problem. If the homeowner will catch it early, then they can solve the problem. If they do not, they have some significant challenges. And with those significant challenges come very expensive bills. Instead of having maybe a small problem where they can have some remediation done that might be $5, $7, $8, $10,000, they're ripping off roofs and tearing out rafters and $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. In some cases, they get the house bulldozed down, and that's not an exaggeration.
No, I've seen that.
I've been involved with 3 of them.
So what happens when a homeowner's worried? They call you up and they just say, "Listen, I don't know if I need a roof or not, but I'm worried about the mold. Like my kid's got an inhaler now."
We provide a service for people, and that is, you heard me say before, if somebody doesn't need something, I don't want them to buy it. I don't want people to spend money that they don't have to. But we have professionally trained guys that would be glad to take a look at their home and from a standpoint of helping them determine if they have a problem in that attic and do an inspection for them. We'd like the courtesy to take a look at our product. That's our brochure. At some point in their life, they may be interested in a metal roof, and we'll provide that service for them for free, just for an exchange to take a look at our products.
Interesting offer there. That makes a lot of sense. It's funny. You and I talk about it all the time, right? Roofing, ventilation, exhaust, intake, insulation, mold, all the components. And if they don't hit on all cylinders, they don't work right. But to the average homeowner, and you say to them, your roof is not breathing properly, which is a thing for mold and a great breeding ground. They look at you like, what? It's an attic. I don't go up there. What do I care? Leave it. There's drywall. It's sealed. I don't have to worry.
Yeah.
They don't realize that that's the biggest cover of your house, and it starts from rotting your house.
It sure does. When we go into a home, into an attic, we're going to do many tests, but one of them that we'll do is with what we call a smoke pen. And this smoke pen will give off smoke, and we're going to watch what happens to that smoke. What should happen is the air should come in from the soffit, their overhangs, and take that smoke rapidly out through the ridge vent.
Correct.
Most of the time what we see is that smoke just lingers in the air. Many times we see it work backwards where the air's coming in from the ridge, pushing it out through the soffits, which is an absolute no-no. Worst case scenario, the attic's being pressurized so much by that ridge vent, it's driving the smoke back down through the hatch. And it's just a nasty mess working backwards.
And so that's interesting that you say that. So the smoke pencil, I know from doing audits, you're around windows and it shows like the pressurization of the house where the airflow. But in the attic, the smoke should be going up to the ridge. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, then you have poor ventilation or something for that.
And well, here's the problem. People say, well, what's the difference if the air comes in from the top and goes out through the soffits? Here's the issue. With ventilation, you're getting rid of heat, and you're also getting rid of moisture.
Right.
If your ventilation works backwards, you're pushing the moisture into your insulation. Adam, the Department of Energy says for every 1% moisture in your insulation, you lose 2.5% of your R value. So if you're 10 points high, you've lost one quarter or 25% of your ability to keep the heat in the house, which means you have phenomenal.
And you're a breeding ground for mold.
Exactly. People don't understand that.
And so for anyone for just out there, the ideal situation in an attic that's vented properly is that the temperature in the attic equal to the outside temperature, or where do you want it to be?
We do thousands of inspections a year.
Sure.
Here's what we find. Let's say that it's 30 degrees outside.
Correct.
Your eave temperature is probably going to be somewhere around 5 degrees higher than what the temperature is outside. So it might be 35. Your ridge temperature is going to be within 5 to 10 degrees of what your eave temperature is because the heat has risen.
I gotcha. Okay, so that's important for people to know because they don't realize if you have an attic that's hot, that hot air melts the snow.
Here's what people can do. Just poke your head up in the attic and take a look at this. A good, healthy attic, which we call stage 1, and they'll stage from stage 1 through stage 8. Stage 8, you're bulldozing it down. Okay? A stage 1 attic will be clean plywood or OSB. The nails coming through will be shiny, even if your house is 20, 25 years later. Okay? The floor of the attic, meaning looking at the top of the insulation, will be clean. If you've got dirt, that means your ventilation's working backwards. If you've got rusty nails, that means you've got moisture that's over 15% at times in your house, and it's going to rot.
That's interesting information. So we're going to take a break. But when we come back, I want to talk about what happens if you do have mold. You have to test it. Is it a game over, or is there a solution? We're going to do that in a minute. My name's Adam Helfman. You're listening to the Hire It Done Radio Network. Welcome back. This is Hire It Done. My name's Adam Helfman. In studio, Hall of Famer Frank Farmer, American Metal Roots. Welcome back, Frank.
Thank you very much.
So, mold is a huge issue. Mold in the attic is a huge issue. People don't realize that if you have mold in your attic, it will migrate into your home almost every time.
It does.
So how does, people who have kids running around sniffling noses all the time, how do they know? What's the right, because people are like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's it. Maybe my kid has allergies because of my house.
Yeah, great question. Most of the time they do not recognize it at all, and they don't even understand how that mold gets in. I talked about that ridge vent working backwards. When you pressurize an attic, every hole that you have up there that hasn't been sealed, and in most houses that's a lot, it pushes those spores down into the house. Okay, and it's constantly seeding the house. You can get your ductwork cleaned. You can keep cleaning your house. Use HEPA filters. As long as it keeps reseeding, they got a problem. But here's the signs. When you have a young kid, and I'm going to say under 5 years old, they start having real significant problems because their immune system isn't totally developed, and they're having reactions to this. And you'll see slime start hanging out of their noses, and they think, oh, they just have a cold. No, the mold is really starting to affect them. Then people that are little children that are older than that, they really don't recognize it. Might get some headaches. Adults will feel lethargic, feel a bit of a headache sometimes, but it really hits grandma. So your house is fine, you think, and your mom comes to visit, and she's 78 years old, and all of a sudden she's starting to have significant challenges. Many times it's mold, and people have no idea.
Right, because some people they get used to it, they build up an immune system, and they get it every day. Yes. I can walk into a house, because I rehab a lot of houses all around, and I can tell if there's mold. And typically people think, oh, mold, that must mean in a bathroom or in a basement.
Yeah.
But I know equally, if not more, it's in the attic.
Yes. And that's a good point. You can tell when a person's been subjected to it, they can feel it immediately. Our guys, when they open up an attic, they can tell immediately if they've got a real bad problem. And if we look up in there and it's anything but black, black, maybe a little bit of white, we start seeing the green slime look like green eggs and ham up there all over the place. I tell you guys, get out, because you need a respirator.
It's toxic.
And so I say that to the homeowner too. If they open it up and they see that, get out of there.
Right. And you got to be careful. Mold is no joke. People think, oh, well, we grew up as a kid. I was outside. I was rolling in the dirt. Yeah, but with building materials, tighter houses, the off-gassing or VOCs that are in a lot of products, it's like you pick up your dry cleaning. No one ever thought. You pick your dry cleaning up, you hang it up. Those plastic and the chemicals, they say just that alone can cause a toxic reaction to a person.
Yes, and it's not just the older homes. I recently had a call from a guy, and I went out and helped him. He was an attorney here in town, and I took a look at his house. It was 2 years old. It wasn't built right. Now, simply, there was a couple of errors that were made, and they were oversights. One was there was a hole that was cut from inside the house that they were going to run some a chase up in a laundry room, and it was wide open, a 6-8 inch hole up there. Okay, and second thing, somebody made a mistake and didn't cut the ridge out when they put the ridge vent on. Okay.
Oh. So that's nice.
Yes. And so when people say, well, mine's fine, you don't know. Folks, take a look. It takes 5 minutes. Okay?
And here's the thing. Ridge vents are cute and good, but if they're not installed properly, you do not get the ventilation that you need.
Yes. Most commodity ridge vents are real problematic. if it's not a baffled, what we call a baffled ridge vent, if there's not an external baffle that deflects the air up and over, that would create a suction in your attic, your ridge vent is going to work backwards. A lot of the ones that look like, scrub buds.
Right.
Just garbage. You see them at the local big box stores. They're a buck a foot.
Well,
A
here's
good
what I
ridge
know.
vent's $20 a foot.
And if they install them wrong, they compress them.
Yes.
And that just closes off the air, and you can't do that. I had a management company recently call me, and they said, Adam, we have to redo the roofs on 75 units. I'm like, okay, I've got all the best roofers. Let me see the spec. They had CertainTeed shingles, GAF ridge vent, and I said, who wrote the spec? I said, what about the insulation? Because they're not calling for any insulation. One of the units has no overhangs. So they're like, well, we might do a drip edge vent, And I went myself, looked out, and they have a drip edge vent now. And the guy goes, "Yeah, it fills with snow."
Yes, ventilation is scientific. Okay, we measure the amount of square inches at the ridge per foot. A real good ridge vents will run 18, 20. Ours is 21, which is the highest rated vent in the industry. So to feed that vent, 21 square inches of venting at the ridge, you need to have 10 and a half at each eave. Do you know that most homes that have vinyl soffitting,
Sure.
okay, if they have a 1 foot overhang, it can't even supply half the air to that ridge vent.
Really?
It chokes it right off. So what?
Because
good
those
is it?
little pinholes?
Exactly. So if you have, it's like a garden hose, okay? If you have a 3/4 inch garden hose, it's pumping out a lot of water. If you stand on it and don't feed the end of that hose, you're not getting any water through. Same thing with ventilation.
So when you guys go out and inspect the roof, you also look at the overhangs.
We have to.
Right.
If we can't feed the vent, we can't improve the situation. So I'm constantly surprised at people that don't know the equations in which how you need to feed. One feeds the other. If you don't have a balanced system, it's just not going to work right.
That's the key. It's interesting because I do, obviously metal roofing is the benchmark for roofs. If you want the last roof you'll ever buy, a metal roof's the way to go.
Yes.
We all agree on that. But the asphalt manufacturers have recently realized, okay, what's our latest, lipstick on a pig type of situation? What can we do? Can we offer a lifetime roof? How are we going to do that, right? With less oil, less ingredients. And so what I did notice this, contractors are getting smarter. The ones that are really successful in the roofing business understand the importance and the value of proper ventilation
Yes.
and insulation. So the intake, the exhaust, and the insulation done properly can actually help the shingle last longer. However, from the concept, like you said, talking about it's one thing. Getting the guys on the roof to actually do that and make sure you're hitting on all cylinders, it's a feat.
It is a whole education process that our company, from the day we hire new craftsmen to teach them ventilation. But we constantly are monitoring what's going on in the field. On every crew is a quality guy, and it is his job to make sure that all those things
Confirming, confirmation and
Yes.
validation. Like you said, that one builder, he probably didn't do it on purpose, but lack of oversight, lack of proper quality management makes that a system.
Well, in fairness, they had cut out the plywood.
Sure.
And they put the felt paper on over it, and which is common when you're building a house. But then you go back and cut the felt paper out as you put the ridge vent on, because they're going to felt it to keep it dry inside. Well, it's the same as not cutting the plywood out. There was no way. It's like put your head inside of a baggie. You're not
it's
going
the
to breathe.
worst. How often, when you do an inspection on a roof, do you find a vent fan from a bathroom just venting into the attic?
Most of the time.
And there you
Or
go.
worse, or where they run the pipe over into the soffit.
Right, and it all of a sudden you think it's going to go down? I mean,
So it goes to the soffit. That's your intake. So it sucks all that water right back inside, and it's molding all around that pipe.
so for anyone listening right now, can we tell them to go check in the attic? Just pop your head up in your attic, because
Yes.
I can't even fit through my attic access.
They don't. You know what? If they can't, take their phone.
Right,
And use the flash.
video, right.
Go up there and shoot some pictures. And look, folks, shoot right above your head. If you see rusty nails, you have had moisture that has been significant building up inside that house.
It's important. And so if people want to see a little bit more about that, can they go to your website and check out
Absolutely.
AmericanMetalRoofs.com?
Yeah. Also, they can go to YouTube. Okay, go to YouTube and just type in American Metal Roofs.
Yeah.
And they'll find 100 videos, and many of them will help them with some of the stuff that we're talking about. Look for just type in ventilation. Type in American Metal Roofs Ridge Vent.
Yeah, because you guys really put out rich content. I call it rich content because it's so informative.
Yes.
Which is important. We just got take a text. It says, don't forget to have people make sure the bathroom fans are vented through the roof, which we know. Now remember, through the roof, not through the soffit.
Right.
Because you just said soffits are used to draw air in. It's a very good point. Another one just said, what about can vents with fans on them? Worthwhile? ?
Okay, let me address it. It depends. If you have a ridge vent with any other open vent except for soffits, you'll short circuit your system. The air will come in the can vent or come in a gable vent and go out the ridge vent. Okay, so if they have a can vent that is powered, or any type of power vent, and there's some good solar ones that are out there right now too. They work wonderfully. Not as good as a high flow ridge vent, but it can do the job.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to ask about gable vents, ridge vents, because can you have both? I've heard mixed reviews, and maybe it depends on the roof, so we're going to talk about that when we come back as well. I'm Adam Helfman. You're listening to Hire It Done.